Okay, guys, good job. You did it. You guys can find your seat. I love the conversation, the connection. Come on, you can find your seat. Come on. Oh man, now we can't get them back. I love it. Good job. I know for some of you that might have been a little bit hard and difficult, but I'm really proud of you. Just give yourself a pat on the back. We did that. Whew. Okay, now we just have to wait another week. They're probably gonna make us do that again. So here we do like to make you a little bit squidgy. I am gonna make you feel that feeling probably again later in just a little bit. So you felt it once, you can feel it again. You're gonna be great. And so good morning. I am so excited to be up here. I love just seeing your faces. There is part of me that does want to go around and I want to be part of those conversations. Like when we say silence and solitude, what does that make you feel? And so maybe afterwards you can come tell me, but I wanted to be a part of a group just because silence and solitude, it's something that we don't do enough of. I'm going to get into that more, but I'm quickly just going to give you a little update on Ryan. So for those of you who don't know, Ryan is my husband, and he is on a sabbatical. He is going to be on a 3-month sabbatical, and we're about a month and a week in. And a couple weeks I was up here, and I told you he was doing okay. It was a little hard. It's interesting, you guys, what it stirs up for him, what it stirs up for me, what it stirs up for our kids. I'm just like writing things down, like, oh man, this is coming up. But so we're about a month and like I said, a week in, and I feel like he's finally settled in. It is so weird. I am, okay, I can't go into this very long. Maybe after we're both done with our sabbaticals, we'll come in and give you like the feedback of what we felt. But he's settled in. And it's so incredible. Like the other day we went into a grocery store. We were shopping. And usually he's the one who's like walking in front of me, like, come on, we gotta go. All of a sudden I'm like walking, I'm like, where is Ryan? He was like feet behind me. I'm going, what is going on? He's just like, I got all the time in the world. I'm like, what? His pace has changed. I like it. I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing this. So, and then I wanted to give you a little information just for it, because tomorrow, he is headed off to a place called Refuge, and it's a retreat for pastors and CEOs and people who have their own businesses. It's called Refuge. They do them for men, and then they do them for women. But this one, of course, he's going to the men's, and it is it's in Wyoming. And so I just love the timing on this, where it feels like he's fully like unhooked from everything, and now he gets to go to this place where it's just for refreshment and encouragement. And the big hook that was for him is he'll do a lot of fly fishing. So they're gonna fly fish every day. And the evenings, they have a chef on site, so he gets all this glorious food. He'll be at it, just meeting new people, new guys. And I am so excited. He's so excited to go. And so as you guys just know, like as you pray for him this week, he will be there, and just praying for him and blessing him as he's there. And I know it's just the timing. I'm like, this is so God. It's so good. For myself and our team, you can add us to your prayers. We are headed up tomorrow to go to a pastor's conference up in Portland. And so there was a moment where we thought, oh, well, Ryan could just join us and he can go up and do this whole thing. And it was God that this whole thing with the Refuge, the dates, it was this exact date that they were like, oh no, we only have an opening for you to come to Refuge on this date. And we were like, oh, Of course, why would we ask you to go to a pastor's conference when you're on sabbatical? We are not smart. So he's going to do that, and we are going to be up in Portland for this conference, and we're looking forward as a team just to being up there. So it feels like a really exciting week for us. But besides that, so now to why we're really here. And as I'm kind of wrapping up a 2-week series, it's very short, on silence and solitude. And I want to start off with a study that I read and found as I was prepping for this message. And this is from a psychology professor, Timothy D. Wilson, and he's from the University of Virginia. And he did this study, and then he posted the study in this science journal, but that he found that people of all ages and both genders do not enjoy being alone at all. Wilson and colleagues from Harvard asked participants to spend anywhere from 6 to 15 minutes alone in a comfortable room that contained no external stimuli. The idea was to provide a thinking period in which participants could entertain themselves solely on whatever flitted through their minds. However, they were not entertained. In fact, many said that they could not concentrate under such seemingly benign conditions and found the experience unpleasant. Now, how unpleasant? Well, they put 18 men in a room with a device that would give them a small electrical shock if they pressed this button. 12 of them administered the electric shock to themselves rather than continue to sit alone with their thoughts during their session. One participant pushed the shock button 190 times. I'm hoping that was more on the 15-minute side than the 6-minute side. 190 times. We do not like to be alone. We would rather be shocked than be alone with our thoughts. We would rather have pain than face maybe what's going on in here or here. It sounds intense, but honestly, I'm like, I wonder how many times I would hit that shock button because it's kind of intense. In our society, we have created a life that will keep this idea of being alone as far from a reality as possible. This is just what we do. We fill our spaces, we add the activities, we increase the pace. Do not stop, do not slow, do not be quiet, and do not be alone. Our calendars are jam-packed, our jobs demand the next thing. I mean, we are notified, I have my phone here, but we are notified of all these new apps, the little red button on, for the emails, how many emails have I missed? It's everywhere. And I mean, honestly, I have to set reminders to go get my kids. Now I know I have 4 kids, it's a lot, but my life that's not good when I'm like, oh shoot, did I forget somebody? We know how to fill our lives to the extreme, and sometimes the activities are really great, but for me, I'm wondering for us, it just feels like there's no end in sight. And we have to begin to ask ourselves, is this pace, is it working for us? For me, for Ryan, for our team, and I know for a handful of you as we begin to dive into this practice, we're wanting to make adjustments, and we're having to go okay, this is not working. We have to stop. Something has to give. And so as a community, we are diving into these practices and rhythms of Jesus as we are following him in the narrow way. And as we choose to live more intentionally with our schedules, our relationships, and devotion to Jesus, I know in my own life and in our lives, we are making those adjustments. And with the practices that we're sharing, from Sabbath to generosity to mission, and now as we're in solitude and silence, we know that what we're in today is that it's vital. It's vital to our walk and our formation with Jesus. And I think Andy, I'm going to probably reference Andy's message from last week a couple times because it was so good. You guys should go find it. Add that to your to-do list. But this is something that we are very passionate about, like finding practices that will slow us down in order to connect to hear, connect to one another, and to connect with the formation of Jesus. As humans, we need silence and solitude. Research has shown that 15 to 20 minutes of daily practice of silence and solitude consistently for 2 to 3 months can drastically lower your anxiety and stress. What if we just took a few minutes every day and we could actually see the fruit of that in our health? And now, as followers of Jesus, silence and solitude are foundational to our spiritual life. We have to take this seriously. In the Gospels, we read that it's probably more, but there's about 20 instances where Jesus went away in silence and solitude to be with the Father. And as Andy shared last week, Jesus would spend so much time with the multitudes and his disciples, eating around a table, and then he would just go off and be by himself. And so these practices, the silence and solitude, but then also within community, these are two foundational parts of what we need. We can't just all go be by myself, and this is so wonderful. We have to be known. We have to be in community. And next week and the week after, we're going to spend time with the practice of community. And so I found this quote by Henry Nouwen, and it says, "Without solitude, it is virtually impossible to live a spiritual life. We do not take spiritual life seriously if we do not set aside some time to be with God and listen to him." And then I found another quote within this book that I would highly recommend if you're like, okay, well, maybe I'll start entertaining the thought of silence and solitude. It's called The Invitation to Solitude and Silence by Haley Ruth Barton. And she says this: "The invitation to solitude and silence is just that. It's an invitation to enter more deeply into the intimacy of relationship with the one who waits just outside the noise and busyness of our lives. It's an invitation to communication and communion with the one who is always present, even when our awareness has been dulled by distraction. It's an invitation to the adventure of spiritual transformation in the deepest place of our being. An adventure that will result in greater freedom and authenticity and surrender to God than we have yet experienced." And this is not a practice, Andy said this too last week, for just introverts. A lot of us will be like, oh, this is so great. This fits perfectly. I want to be by myself. I mean, that's nice. But this is also for the extroverts that have to get away from people to find that quiet. This is not your private me time away from the kids, away from the demands of your life. I mean, we can have those. We need those, yes. But these are different. These are calling us out. And this is the working definition of solitude is just a quiet place. It's intentional time free of all input and noise except yourself and God. There's no phones, no music, not even instrumental music, no books and no podcasts, and sometimes no Bible. It's a place where you are not in control, where there is no formula. You come just as you are. And I truly believe that true transformation can happen in solitude. And this morning, I'm going to take some time to kind of share some places and things that we will most likely encounter as we journey into solitude and silence, and as we go into the quiet places. And as I'm going to give you like 3 different things. This is not exhaustive. I've been on this journey for a long time, but even this has been fairly new to me, so I am not a master. I do not have this all figured out. I'm not becoming like a monk or anything like that. But these are some just things that I want to bring before you as I'm challenging you to be like, let's go before the Father in solitude. in silence, just you and him. And so the first thing we could encounter, or we will, is ourselves. Gunilla Norris, this is from a poem that she wrote called Sharing Silence. When we make room for silence, we make room for ourselves. Silence invites the unknown, the untamed, the wild, the shy, the unfathomable, that which rarely has a chance to surface within us. Now, on my journey with solitude and silence, I've known Jesus for a long time, but then just I've been doing quiet times or times with Jesus for a very long time. Let's say like over 20 years, 20 plus years. And and at the very, in part of my process, and I know I come before you, when I get up here, I'm always willing to share stories of my own life. But this story goes back, I swear, it's like the beginning of when I was going, oh no, something needs to change in my life. And I was, because every time I would get into silence or solitude by myself, I would face huge emotions and feelings of panic and anxiety and fear. You know, I was young. I was 22. Ryan and I had just gotten married. We were in ministry doing youth group. And as I would get alone with Jesus, even at nights before bed, it would get quiet, and all of a sudden I just have this bombardment of panic and fear. And I was like, what is going on? I knew something's not right. And I also knew, I was like, this can't stay here in my life. I knew the freedom, I knew the life that the Lord had for me. And yet every time I would get quiet, I would face these real feelings. And I would go, oh my gosh. So, and it was, you know how fear, what it always does, it holds you back from the things that you so desperately want. And so I was desperate to get free. I knew I had to look at the hard and disconnected places in my life in order to live the life that I knew. I was like, oh gosh, I feel the freedom, but this is just in my way. And I read that desperation is a really good thing in the spiritual life. Desperation causes us to be open to radical solutions, willing to take all manner of risks in order to find what we are looking for. Desperate ones seek with an all-consuming intensity, for they know that their life depends on it. And I know my life, I was desperate. I was like this. It was affecting my relationships, my ministry. It was holding me back. And I just was like, what is happening? I need help. And so once I allowed myself, I would have to go get quiet again. But then the Lord began to reveal pain, brokenness and pain and fears that were connected to real situations in my life. And I'm not asking you to, I want you to go before the Father. And sometimes when we go before the Father, and as we become true to ourselves, that we will face some things that are like, oh gosh, I don't want you to sit there by yourself. I want you to go, I need a trusted counselor, therapist, friend, who I can at least confess these things to and who will be willing to walk with me. And so I found an amazing mentor and woman, and I was like, I need help. And I need you to go with me. And she was like, let's do this. So we began a journey where she would just sit with me. And I would go before the Father and I'd be like, okay, Jesus, what are you saying about this? I feel this. This is not from you. And I need you to meet me here. And she would pray for me and be with me. And so I say, we're talking about silence and solitude, and I'm like, but go get a trusted friend. It's in some instances we need that. And so for me, at the beginning of my journey, we would meet, and we would meet for hours. Sometimes she'd be like, you're gonna bring your lunch. We're gonna be here from 9 to 5. I was like, okay, buckle up, here we go. But I began to get free. And even to this day, there's times where I'm like, I'm going before the Father in silence, I'm like, ooh, I feel that, Jesus. Let's go there. So I want to take a moment and just be really clear that there is a difference between encountering yourself and self-actualization, or the whole self-help concept that our world is all about, that striving to get to our own highest potential. You know what we're talking about? There's so many books. Oh, here, do this. The self-help arena is focused on the self as the beginning and the end. Within solitude and silence, that focus is not on self, but it's on God and on how God relates to you, where God is our guide. Self-help has no guide. It is your own brokenness leading you, and that never satisfies, and there is no fruit from that. We will just spin ourselves around and around and around, and usually make more of a mess. So we need God as our guide because he cares for you. He wants to draw you away, and he wants to speak to you. He wants your healing more than you desperately want it. And there's part of this, as you're like, okay, maybe I'll do this. But we want to sit with ourselves. I know it might be a new thing and we might want to electrocute ourselves, but because when we get quiet before the Lord with ourselves, we have to be honest. And usually the harder emotions, and now I know all emotions are great, we need them all, but sometimes that there's just harder emotions. They will always surface first because they tend to be the loudest, because they are the ones that are in most need of God's touch. And sometimes we feel like those things are obstacles, like the hard emotions of the anger, the frustrations, the panic. We're like, I don't want to bring those to God. I want to try and ignore those. I don't want to talk about those. But the things that we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves have the most power. So if we are just sitting there, we're like, I'm not dealing with that. That thing still has a hold on you. Oh man, I don't want those things to have a hold on my life or on your guys' life. And so we have to acknowledge them. We cannot hide them. I read that pain is a stimulus of something that is in need of God's attention. Man, I have, to this day, right now, I have places of pain in my life. And that's where I know, God, this is where you want to meet me. As we acknowledge our pain and come honest before God, those places become the entrance into actual transformation and healing. And so if I know that, if I know, oh gosh, these big emotions, these hard emotions, I can't ignore them. I might try, but they will start to affect my life in usually big ways. But then all of a sudden I'm like, I want to bring everything into the presence of Jesus. I'm like, oh gosh, I do this because I feel like it's like right here. Like, oh man, there's hurt. I want to bring that into the presence of Jesus. Oh, there's pain there, there's fear. I want to bring that into the presence of Jesus. Because if we're only, I know we've said this before, if we're only bringing in like, oh, here I am, I'm all good, I'm smiling, I'm happy today. If we're only bringing that, then there's like a whole portion of us, all these feelings that we've like shoved in the back, not talking about those, that are in desperate need of healing, and they don't get to come into the presence of God. Because we're like, no. And God's like, wait, what's around there? Oh, nothing. I want to bring everything. And it's scary and it's risky. You have to be brave. I want to bring everything. I'm like, okay, Jesus, I'm going to trust you with all these things that I'm feeling. And it feels like exposure, but it's a good kind of exposure. I'm going to bring this fully into the presence of God because I want all of this transformed. I want all of this healed. I don't want to hide. I don't want things caught in the back. I'm like taking a light, going back, like, what else is back there? on good days. I may need a little encouragement. And I want to encourage you as he reveals things, that there's like a cheesy saying, as he reveals things, it means that he wants to heal them. It's not cheesy because it's, maybe a little, but it's so true. He shows you things because he wants to take you, he sees those and he wants to take those places into his presence. And he wants to take you to places that you couldn't go on your own. In our own strength, in our own striving, I'm like, okay, I know that belief is bad and I'm gonna just, say a positive word. And then it's just like, that does not go very far or it doesn't go very long. I come in and I go, God, this is what I'm feeling. In silence, in solitude, these first things that I'm feeling, I want you to meet me with this. And he comes in so tenderly. And I know, you guys, sometimes I'm like, oh, this is so overwhelming. There is really big things that I'm feeling. And in my full life, I set reminders to get my kids. How am I supposed to find time to meet with Jesus with this? And there's been places where I'm like, okay, I'm putting Jesus in my calendar and I'm meeting him at Thursday at 2 p.m. And I'm like, I'm setting aside a time because that desperation is like, it will drive me to go, I have to meet with Jesus. I meet with him in the morning, but usually in the morning, there's still I want to be fully there. So I set time aside. And then there's sometimes where I'm like, okay, Jesus, we have 40 minutes. What are you gonna do? I kind of challenge him. And you know what? He shows up. Sometimes not in the ways that I think, but his presence is always there as I am in the silence and the solitude. So these are all kind of gonna blend together. But this one, another thing we could encounter is our enemy. And as we are quiet before the Lord, I know that a lot of you might be like, oh yeah, I feel this. But we cannot be naive to think that we will go into silence and solitude and have, just really sweet times with Jesus or really hard times with Jesus as he's revealing things and not encounter the enemy of our souls. The enemy will come in fighting to keep us away from anything that will bring us to the Father and to his presence. He will bring in fear. He'll bring in distraction, anxiety. He will bring in resistance where, probably in some of you guys in your conversations, you're like, oh, I don't know about that. That's resistance. And that is where the enemy's like, yeah, you don't want that. You don't want to go be quiet. You'll have random wild thoughts. Your to-do lists will come up because the enemy's goal is to sabotage you. He doesn't want you to get free. He wants to continue to speak his lies, bring his distractions, to keep you away from the place that could bring you the true transformation. Matthew 4 and in Luke 4, Jesus went into the wilderness, into the desert, and he experienced Satan, the enemy, out there. And so we have to know that even in silence and solitude, this is the battle. This is the war. Because the enemy knows that he could keep you away from there. And then he knows he only works in darkness. So he's like, if I can just keep them out of the illumination of Holy Spirit and Jesus' presence, he is winning. And I'm like, no. Enemy, you cannot do this. So we have to be aware. I found this, I know I could talk to you and you guys would probably be like, yeah, I know what the enemy's voice sounds like. I know what it sounds like to me. But I just found a couple of phrases that I want to, distinctions between God's voice and the enemy's voice. And I just want to read them. It might be basic. I'd be like, yeah, no, I get that. But for me, even this week, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to remember this. I'm in a battle right now. And the enemy is trying to win me like away from the presence of Jesus. And I have to like wake up and go, oh, wait. So this is what I read. It says, God's voice will convict you of sin and draw you closer to him. Satan's voice will condemn you and drive you further from God. God's voice tends to still you. Satan's voice tends to rush you. God's voice tends to assure you. Satan's voice frightens you. God's voice enlightens you. Satan's voice confuses you. God's voice encourages you. Satan's voice discourages you. God's voice comforts you, and Satan's voice worries you. And God's voice calms you, and Satan's voice obsesses you. We have to be on guard. If we are like, I'm gonna come before the Father and be quiet, the enemy is he wants to be there to be like, no. Go take care of that thing. Go do that thing. But we have to be aware. And in the midst of the silence, and if you are confronting the lies of the enemy, ask God to bring his truth and peace. Tell the enemy he is not allowed here. Be aware. I think we just have to go in knowing like, okay, I'm gonna encounter myself and all my stuff. I could be encountering the enemy and how he wants to pull me away. And the last thing that I know that we will encounter is God. Now, of course, God should be always encountering us. But we will come before the Father in silence and solitude and experience Jesus. And as we come into God, we come to God in silence and solitude, it might be a little scary. You know, we're coming before like the mighty God of the whole world, and here I am, just Kate, coming before him. I'm like, what are you gonna say to me? And one of the things that I choose to incorporate into my practice of the silence and solitude is releasing control of how this will look with him. Because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go take some time and I'm gonna encounter God. Well, I want it to look like this, and I'm expecting this from God, and I don't allow God to just do what he does best and be in control and in charge of my life. Because, for me, I want to be in control of everything. So this is a place of releasing control. Because what if I release control and he does not meet us in the way that we want to be met? What if he doesn't come and the things that my heart truly wants, what if he doesn't meet those? And it's just the basic question of what if I show up and God doesn't? We hesitate to enter into solitude and silence because we are afraid that this solitude thing works for everybody else but for me. And I believe, I hope, and I know that deep down in my life, I want God to show up. I want him to come and to speak his truth, to bring peace to situations in my life. And I have to acknowledge that truth, and that I desperately want him and his presence in my life. And we have a deep desire to be met by God. I think we all even come into church because you all want something from God, right? You're not just like, oh, sure, I'll just come in. And like, if I could sit with you, you'd probably say, yes, I want this from God. I need him to meet me this way. And so it's coming into those moments and going, okay, God, I'm going to give you some time. But I need you to show up. And we have a deep desire to be met by him. And if he doesn't show up, then this desire is unfulfilled and left unmet. And unfulfilled desires are very, very painful. We have them in places of our lives where you're like, you have not shown up for me. I can't ignore that. What do I do with this, Jesus? And now I'm supposed to come before you again? And then we can feel that of, gosh, you may not show up. And then if you don't show up, what does that mean about me? I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. You don't have time for me. Maybe you don't want to be with me. Maybe I haven't done the right things. And so with him the fear of him not showing up, then that just goes into like maybe the inner dialogue of like, yeah, I don't have what it takes. He doesn't want to be with me. And that is a lie from the enemy. But that could also just be like, because of so many desires in your life that you have felt have not been fulfilled. And as we come honest with this truth and acknowledge that fear of like, well, he might not show up, this challenges me to come to trust God with myself, my heart, my soul, and the fear that my longing will not be met. Because the truth is, if we have a desire to be with Jesus, our desire is just a response to what he feels for you. He desires you so immensely. And I know that even as because there's real things that maybe our hearts, like we have not experienced him meeting us in. But in this place, he's like, oh gosh, I want to meet you in that. Can I talk to you about that desire? Can I speak my truth over you? Because he desires you so immensely. And what I love is because sometimes I'm like, oh man, Jesus, I just desire you so much. Like, please show up, like desperation. And he's like, I desire you even more than you desire me. He initiated the desire to be with us. We love God because he first loved us. We reach for God because he first was reaching out for me. And when we feel his desire, we are responding to God because he has already initiated this with us. His love is calling you out. As we acknowledge our desire for him and understand that it's him that has drawn us to this place, we can settle in enough to begin conversing and communing with God. We can experience that God is for me, and he's with me, and he's in me. And so as we look at even this practice, I don't want you to give up on your heart's cry that you want to meet with God. He wants to meet with you. And the other, and just one more thing as we're going to be wrapping up. Within silence and solitude, yes, we will have to come face to face with ourselves and be aware of what the enemy would want to do to distract us from the true healing and transformation. And as we come before God and we're like, oh, Jesus, I so want you to meet me here. I need you here in my life. Those are all really, we have to face those things. We have to be honest with those. And then there's just the part of coming in his silence and solitude. He wants you to come because he wants to give you rest. In silence, in solitude, there's rest for your souls. Out of the chaos, out of the busyness, out of the to-do list, he wants to meet with you. And he wants to bring you into silence and meet you to refresh and to rest upon you. It says, there's 2 verses, and you guys know them, out of Mark. It says, come with me by yourself to a quiet place and get some rest. And then the one out of Psalms 23, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He is the silence. He is in the stillness that quiets our soul. He is in the refreshment of the solitude. So where we want, yes, we will have to face some of the pain. But there's honestly, in some of my times with Jesus, as I sit with him in quiet and in solitude by myself with nothing going on, no inputs, more often than not, I just feel his peace. I just feel his rest and his quiet. I can take a deep breath in and go, okay, I have a busy day, Jesus, but you're here. You're filling me. And I want you to know that this practice, this discipline of silence and solitude, it's a slow thing. This is not like, oh, good, I got that, I figured it out. I'll try that again another time. Like, this is something that has to be incorporated. Not has to. I would challenge you. I'm not going to force you to do anything. To be consistent with it, to try it, to see what you feel, to see what stirs up. But don't give up too early. As I've been reading, I know I've been on this journey, but even other books that I've been reading, and I'm like, man, people have been doing this for a really long time. And they just come before the Father. And it's so beautiful to see what their life is doing. I would assume that they have just this peace that they carry with them that not a lot of the world is offering to us. And so we're getting close. You guys are all doing great. This is where the part you might be like, oh gosh, it's gonna get a little squidgy. We're gonna do a little practice together of silence and solitude. Now, I did think, I was like, man, I should just do the whole service as silence and solitude, 40 minutes. I think no one would come back the next week. So what we're gonna do this morning is that we're gonna practice this together. And I know we're not in solitude. I know, so the solitude, you go away from other people. There's quite a bit of people around you. But we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do it for 3 minutes. Now, last week, Andy did it for 1 minute, and later I was like, no, that was much longer than a minute. He's like, no. I was like, oh my gosh. It will feel awkward. You will, oh gosh. It's gonna get quiet. But this is where I know the Father, even just his peace will come upon you. I want you to stay with yourself. Don't, seriously, put your phones away. Settle in, take a deep breath. And to keep your mind focused, this is something I do. I'm gonna put some phrases up on just like words that you can choose to help just like focus you back. Because let's be honest, I know your mind is gonna wander to like, what are we doing for lunch? Oh, I gotta add that to my grocery list. Oh no, did I put that thing, on my calendar for this week? Your mind will go, and that's okay. There's no shame. There's no you're gonna be fine. But these are some things that you could just say, come, Holy Spirit, that will just draw you back in. Draw you back in. And just to be quiet and still. So I'm going to set a 3-minute timer. And hold on, I'm gonna do something. Sorry, guys. And then it will, hold on. Sorry. I was going to have it go longer. Nope, I got to set the right timer. The timer at the end, if I'm like in the Holy of Holies and the timer goes off, it's not going to be like, ooh, it's not going to like spin us out. It might just be like a gong. So don't be freaked out by that. It's just letting you know that. Just putting that out there. But here we go. So Jesus, we just take a deep breath. We are going to give this a practice and to sit quietly within your presence. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. My God, in you I trust. Make known to me your ways, Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me by your fidelity and teach me, for you are my God, my Savior. For you I wait all the day long. As we will transition, well done, you guys. You did it. We are going to just spend a few minutes, I will have Nisha just come up. We're close to being done, but we have communion available. And she's just gonna play quietly and over us. But I would love, maybe you wanna write down, like, how did that feel for you? Did you encounter fears? Did you feel the presence of Jesus? But I also would love for you to take communion and ask the Father, like, how does this look in my life? I have a very busy schedule, a lot going on. Where do I find time to do this, Jesus? This is something that he wants to meet you. Now I know he will meet us through the word. He will meet us in music. But this is just an aspect where he's like, just come. Just be with me in the quiet. Let me speak tenderly to you. And I'm going to read one last thing, and then you guys can go get communion. It says, God's invitation to silence and solitude is not casual. It's an invitation from his very heart to the depths of our being. It warrants serious consideration because it's an invitation to a journey, a quest really, for something we have been longing for all of our lives. Unlike a trip designed to get us somewhere as efficiently as possible, a quest requires us to leave familiar dwelling places for strange lands we cannot yet envision, without knowing when we will return. This journey requires a willingness to say goodbye to life as we know it, because our heart is longing for something more. Will you invite God to show you how to make this part of your journey? So you can sit quietly. If you do want to get some communion, please feel free. But we are just going to take the last 5 minutes to be quiet and still with Nisha playing. Thank you, guys. Jesus, we feel your presence. We feel your tenderness and your stillness. We feel the longing within our heart to find these sacred, quiet places with you. Thank you that you want to meet with us. We hear your voice calling our name, calling us away. We want to be with you, Jesus. I pray for my friends as they are even maybe going, man, how do I incorporate this into my life? Jesus, you are the guide. You will show us. You will speak to us. You will show us how to carve time out to meet the longing of our heart. I thank you for this community. I thank you for my friends who are brave enough to go into these places. We love to be with you, Jesus. I pray that even as we go out back into the hurried paces, that you would just speak to us about that, Jesus. That we would go into this week going, Jesus, I want your presence. I will come away with you. That we would be people who abide at your feet, who come into your presence, who are refreshed, restored, and healed. Bless each one here, each family, each schedule. We love you, Jesus. We thank you for this morning. We thank you for what you're doing. Seal this time, Jesus, as you go with us into what is ahead for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys. We will keep this place just a little quiet, but I know that we're a little bit after, and the teachers are probably ready for parents to come pick up our kids. But thank you for being here. We love you. We will see you next Sunday.